Hello and welcome to this course. I'm going to show you how to make a silver and gold acorn using accent gold for silver paste. We're going to be making this lovely acorn project, which is a silver acorn with the paste used on top to make a nice gold head for it. You can use this material for all different types of projects. Here's another example, which is a silver clay ring that I made where I applied the paste to the front, the kind of bird motif. And for this one I've soldered on a sterling silver ring as well. So there's all different things that you can combine to make really lovely jewellery using the accent gold for silver. So the first thing that we're going to do is go through all the tools and materials you need, and then we'll get going making our acorn. So because I'm making an acorn, I need a mould. So you can either make your own mould using a 2-part moulding compound or buy some from the store. And this is a really nice one. I like this one because it has quite a few different sized acorns. So I could make a little collection with some rings and some earrings and necklaces and things like that. Then we're going to have some badger balm for lubricating our area. I always make sure that I have some cling film when I'm working with metal clay, just so that I can tuck away any clay that I'm not using at the moment. Have a sanding sponge to hand for when we're cleaning up and refining our pieces. I've got my fire brick and my torch, which I'm going to use for torch firing the piece and also torch firing the gold once I've added it to the piece. Now this is the accent gold for silver box, so it comes like this, and I'm using accent gold for silver 2. There are 2 variations of it. If you have the original one, then there are a few different timings, so do check the instructions. But if you're using the same one as me, then this will all be the same. Inside the box, you get this little dish, and inside here is gold powder. Then it also comes with some glycerin, and a little pipette to put it in. So you put a few drops of glycerin, and the final ingredient that you need to add to this, because you have to mix the paste yourself when you first get it, is distilled water. In the UK, this is often called deionized water, and I'm just showing you the actual one that I found because it took me a little while to find it. This one's called Carplan, but if you go to a hardware store and ask for deionized water, then that's going to work for creating this project. So you mix some of your deionized water, some of your glycerin into the paste, and it comes with very clear instructions of exactly how many drops to do, and it's very easy. I have already mixed my paste, but you can see inside that it's a kind of a goldy paste, and if it dries out I might need to add a drop or 2 of the water again, but again it comes with very clear instructions of how to mix the paste, so make sure that you mix it nicely before we do this project. Then you can either use a fine paintbrush, or I actually like using a colour shaper, it's called, a shaping tool, clay shaping tool, to apply our mixture of paste to the piece when the time comes. So yeah, a shaper or a fine paintbrush will work just fine. You need a burnisher of some sort. I've got a nice agate burnisher. We're going to use that towards the end of the project. A brass brush is always useful to have to hand. And then just for my work area, I've got a Teflon sheet, and I like to have some playing cards around so I can move my pieces easily. Then for this project, you only need a few grams of clay. It's a very small piece. I've got a 10-gram pack here, but I'm only going to use a little bit of it. So 5 grams or 3 grams will be perfectly adequate. And that's our tools and materials. So we're going to go ahead and get started with making our acorn project. Wonderful, so we're ready to start making our acorn. I've got my mould. I'm just going to apply some badger balm. If you don't have badger balm, you can use a small layer of olive oil. And I just want to choose the size. I'm going to go for a fairly small acorn because I quite like my dainty jewellery, but you can choose any size you like. I'm going to open up my clay, and I've got quite a big pack of clay here. I don't need all of that, so I'm just going to take a pinch And I try with my moulds to kind of guesstimate exactly how much I'll need, so I don't have to sand too much away. I'm going to roll it into a ball, make sure there are not too many lines, and then just push it in. So I don't mind too much if there's some bits coming out the side, because I can sand those off very easily. But I do want to make sure the back is fairly flat. Great. Then I'm just going to wrap my clay in some cling film, the spare clay, so that I can use that for another project. Then I could either leave that to dry, but I'm going to try and turn it upside down just to inspect it, because there are times when I've left it to dry, taken a look at it, and didn't actually like the effect. So I'm going to just flex the mould and pop it onto a card. Then I can just take a look, and that's a really nice pattern. I'm happy with that. There is a little bit that I'll need to sand, but otherwise that's going to make a really nice piece. Wonderful. So now I'm ready to pop that onto the hot plate and give it a dry. So once my piece has dried and is out of the hot plate, I'm ready to sand it. So I'm going to use my regular sanding pad, give it a nice sand on the back. I like to do a figure of 8 because that gives a nice even sanding when I'm sanding a flat piece. I've got a flat back to this one. I'll do a little bit of that. It actually doesn't need a lot of sanding, depending on how the moulding process went. Sometimes they need more or less. I'm just going to do all the sides as well. Make sure it's obviously 100% dry. And you can, with this new accent gold for silver, you can actually apply it at this stage, but I'm going to apply it after firing. But just so you know, there is the option to apply it at this clay stage as well. So once I'm happy that the piece is refined, I'm going to torch fire that for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to come back and add the gold to it. You also need to think about at this stage what you want to do with your project, what it's going to be, pendant, earrings, so on and so forth. For this one that I made earlier, I made the whole piece and then soldered a jump ring on. And I soldered the jump ring before I did the gold, but you can kind of consider which way round. For the ring, I actually did the gold first and then soldered the ring on, because I knew that I'd need to do a bit more heating up with the soldering. I didn't want to lose the solder join. So it's kind of a piece by piece basis, working out what you need to do. If you are making, say, a regular flat pendant, I would just drill it at this stage so that I've got an attachment. So think about your attachment and when you're going to add them onto your piece, and then go ahead and torch fire the acorn. So now I've torch fired my piece, and I can give it a brass brush just to brush it up a little bit, but I don't want to do too much refining and polishing at this stage, because I'm going to start adding my accent gold for silver. So I want to make sure that that is all well mixed, and then I'm going to start adding it, and I'm just going to add it to this section. So now I'm ready to start adding my gold. I'm just going to apply a little bit to my shaper. And I just very gently do it one bit at a time. You don't want to rush this. An acorn is a lovely project. It's not actually the easiest project because we do have some texture here, and this paste works easiest with a flat surface, but we like a challenge, and I think it's a really nice design. So if you find that you struggle with this one, feel free to try a flatter piece as well. So I want to apply it relatively thick, but not too thick. I'm probably going to do 2 layers, so I'm going to torch fire one and then do another. So don't worry if you don't get absolutely everything in the first go. Normally fire mine 2 times. But I do want to be quite clear as to where the end is. And obviously as it's gold, I'm trying not to waste any, so I try and put a minimal amount I do sometimes get a few little blobs on my surface, but I try to minimise that as much as possible. I'm just going all the way around with my shaper, just applying a layer. And the accent gold for silver, it can feel quite expensive to buy because obviously it's gold, but when you see how much you can get out of a tub, it is a very good value way of adding gold to your work. Okay, so I'm happy with that coverage now. What I'm going to do is pop it on the hot plate, leave it to dry. I need it to be fully dry before I fire it. And I might add another layer. I'll see what it looks like afterwards, and then I'll go ahead and fire the piece. So these pieces I fire for 2 minutes with my torch, but I'll show you that in a little bit. For now, I'm just going to pop it on the hot plate. So now I'm ready to torch fire my piece. I've done a little bit of another layer and I've dried it, made sure that the gold is really dry. So I've got 2 layers on there, nice and dry, and I'm going to torch fire it for 2 minutes. I'm just going to turn on my torch. So it is like torch firing metal clay in that you'll see a bit of the binder burning off and there'll be some smoke. But obviously the piece isn't going to necessarily go to that same peachy glow, so we've got to look out for a subtle version of it, and then I can start my timer. So this is the kind of colour that I'm looking to stay at. So the gold has like a gentle glow to it. I don't obviously want to melt either the gold or my silver, but I want to keep this going for about 2 minutes, so I will see you on the other side. Wonderful, so that's the end of my 2 minutes. I'm just going to turn off my torch, and just always health and safety, make sure that you remember it's very hot, don't touch it, and leave it out of any other hazards. And this piece is also very hot, so I don't want to touch that yet, even though I'm excited to see how it's going to turn out. I'm going to just pop it onto a steel block or somewhere where I can leave it to cool. So I like to use my steel block because it's just quite a fairly quick way to cool it, but if you don't have one, you can just leave it aside and leave it to cool. And the next thing I'm going to do is burnish the gold. So I've got my burnisher ready. I'm just going to give it a few seconds more to cool down first. Yeah, that's cool enough to touch. Great, so then just using an agate burnisher, I'm just going to rub the surface of the gold. And that just helps to compress it, and you can start to see that lovely shine. Now sometimes at this stage, once I've done all the burnishing, some of the gold comes off and you may see some gaps. Don't worry if that happens, especially with a textured piece. That means that you can just apply another layer of the gold to those areas and refire it. Dry it, of course, and then refire it. So often with flat pieces it goes on first time, and textures can take 1 or 2 times. I'm pretty happy with this one. It's looking nice. So I'm just going to go around and burnish the whole piece. Okay, great. So I've run my burnisher over the whole piece. I'm actually really happy with it, and I don't feel like I need to do any more adding for this one, but if you do, now's the time to do it. Then I'm going to start polishing the other element of my piece using my brass brush. I want to try and avoid brushing the gold because even though it has adhered to the silver and it is a fairly decent layer of gold, I just want to be a bit careful around it. So I'm just going to hold it with my finger and brush the other side of the acorn. And the back. And I can really start to see my acorn taking shape. And that is pretty much it. That's pretty much the process. So at this stage I could solder on a jump ring if I wanted to, or I could solder that onto a ring, or if my design had allowed, I might have already drilled a hole in it. And you can see here the finished one. I actually put this one in the barrel polish to finish to give it a really nice polish, and I've soldered the jump ring on, popped it on a chain. You could put this in a barrel polish, or if you prefer, you can polish by hand using the polishing papers. And that is it. So best of luck with using the accent gold for silver. I think this is a really lovely way to add gold to your work. And if acorns aren't your thing, as you can see from the ring as well, there's all different applications that you can use this for. I've actually chosen some quite challenging ones to show you how you can do it on texture, but if you do it on flat, it's even easier and even more effective for some of those results. So enjoy making these pieces, and I will see you on the next video for a final way to add gold to your metal clay.